Alright, in part 3, we're going to finish getting the brakes installed in the chassis. See, I already did it. See, started doing a little bit of wiring harness work there. And we're going to try to get all these welds ground out on these floor pans. I hate grinding. And as you can see, I cut a big hole in the tunnel so we can get the transmission to fit. So now we're going to pack the bearings. You want to get that grease worked all into the bearings. The rear bearing has to go in before the seal. So put the bearing in, seal using your seal driver. The ledge where the seal rides has a little bit of rust on it, so I'm going to take some sandpaper and smooth that out. I forgot to mention, after putting the rear bearing and seal in, fill the inside of the hub with grease. So there's plenty of grease in there for lube and cooling. The front brakes are installed, but while I was doing it, I realized I don't have any backing plates. Don't know if I need them. Not even sure if I can install them. That top bolt's pretty close to the rotor, so I'll have to research it. So concerning the backing plates, I looked at it some more, and it's not possible to put a factory backing plate on here. The factory plates use these lower two holes here, and these are countersunk bolts on these smooth spindles, so looks like we won't be putting backing plates on it. One of the reasons for test fitting the body was to find out how much the transmission is going to interfere with the tunnel. This pocket here is where the automatic shifter goes, so we don't need that, and it is interfering, so we're going to cut that out. And a little bit up in here is interfering, and that's also mount for the automatic shifter and where the cable goes through, so it's not needed either. So I'm going to cut those out, and then we'll see how it fits, and later we'll once we decide where we want the shifter to go, we'll fill that back in with a new piece of metal. So I know there's not a lot of videos or information out there on how TR6060s fit in a C3 Corvette. Here you go. It actually fits pretty well. It's not barely any clearance issue. Alright, so now we confirm the transmission fits, and it actually fits pretty well. Plenty of clearance all the way around and on top now. Checking the floor pans, they look good. I do have a small bit of interference right here in that seatbelt pocket and to the frame, and same on this side, so they must be just a tiny bit lower, but that's easy to remedy. But when you look at the front mounting, the front seat mounts, they look pretty parallel to the Crossmember, which makes me feel good about the install. Something I haven't talked about is the Crossmember to fit a TR6060. I bought this mount, and I'll put the link in the description of the company. But the problem is you have to move the factory mounting locations back 2 inches. You can see where the original was with that mark and the hole. This is something I did before I started making the videos. So I'll talk a little bit more about that once I get the body back off the chassis. Alright, so you got all the grinding done. I used a mixture of grinding wheel, flap disc, and then a little belt sander to get into the tight spots. You see a difference here. This is what grinder looks like. This is what flap disc looks like. I'll come back and I'll take the flap disc to smooth these out before I coat it. But I'm glad that's done. What I'll do next is I'll come in here and I'll grind off the coating that's on there, and I'll take a seam sealer and I'll seal all along the parts that are open. I also still have to make the front corners. I still haven't got that done yet on both sides, but that shouldn't be too hard. A little more about the Crossmember to fit a TR6060. The automatic cars had a removable Crossmember, and you can see the pocket here where it used to sit 2 inches over further. So you just cut this top bracket off, move it over, weld it back in. The bottom I drilled new holes and put rib nuts in. But the reason for doing that is the way the TR6060 mounts, and you need to get the tail of the transmission down so that your drive shaft angle is correct. And to do that, the mount drops below the Crossmember. So this mount that I bought, you can see, moves the mounting location in front of the Crossmember so that you can get the correct drive shaft angle. Now this mount that I bought, I had to modify it in this area because the reverse lockout solenoid is mounted in different orientations on TR6060s, and so I had to cut the corner off of this bracket right here. And then in the bottom, you can't see it here, as in the previous video, I had to clearance for one of the bolts, but besides that, it fits pretty well. I also need to get started on the rear body mounts. As you can see, that one's pretty bad shape. I'm gonna have to cut the original bolt out. It's still in there. The other side, the bolt's gone. I'm gonna have to do some fiberglass repairing that pocket. I have all new parts, just have to get started on it. As I was looking around, I noticed a second from the front body mount needs to be replaced also. Normally the lift and the block were right over that, so I hadn't noticed how bad it was. And I figured since I didn't really show you how I replaced the rear one and located the hole, that one didn't have enough material left to use it as a template, so I had to mirror the whole location from the other side of the birdcage. But this one has enough left. So I'm going to show you how I make a template so that I can get the hole back in the same location. I basically just take a piece of cardboard and I made it fit into the birdcage. I drew lines here and back here so I know where to locate it. And then from the top, I just drew a circle with a Sharpie. So now I know exactly where that hole needs to go. So next what I'll do is I'll come in here and I'll cut this out. I'll make a piece to fit. I'll use the template to locate the hole in that piece and then to weld it back in place. Well, there we go. We got that second mount replaced. You can see I went up top and welded it from the inside as well as much as I could. It turned out pretty good. And there's the process. Ignore my welding, it's not great. I'm not a good welder, but that's what grinders are for, right? So with that complete, we're getting close to having the metal work done. Still have to do small little corners of the floor pans. That shouldn't be too bad. And then get everything sanded down like this. Get all this coating off so that we can put a good coating on it. Something else I've been working on is the wiring harness. Figuring out, this is a T56 wiring harness out of like a 2000 Trans Am. So the TR6060 connectors are a little bit different. This harness is in pretty rough shape too. So I'm just basically figuring out what connectors I need to order, what pigtails, and then I'm going to start into this wiring harness, start taking out all the stuff I don't need. So I think that'll wrap up part 3. More to follow.